An extremely fascinating PR game of cat and mouse is unfolding right now geopolitically, and with any major shift in power, with any major conflict or revolution, PR is key, and it's reaching its boiling point right now with Venezuela and the United States. And that's why in this video specifically, we will tell you about the latest developments, geopolitical international updates, as well as how this new alleged president of Venezuela just arrived in Caracas safely without incident. Of course, another PR event that we're going to break down in great detail, that of course the corporate establishment media won't and does not do. But we do it here mainly because of your support, like you purchasing a t-shirt on our Teesprings website, which is linked below in the description, and where now you could show your disdain for either CNN and Fox News. And of course, all of your funds, all of your support, all of the money from those t-shirts goes directly to independent journalism and future on-the-ground reports like we did previously in Caracas, Venezuela, which you could also watch in the description and will give you important context about this very divisive issue. Now, the latest developments in Venezuela are very worrying to say the least. Now, of course, members of the US government as well as Trump's administration are hoping and engineering for a coup d'etat in Venezuela, which of course the mainstream media is cheering on, while at the same time predominantly detesting and some would even say sabotaging the bigger deal that Trump is trying to do, a peace deal with, of course, North Korea, which should give you something to think about when it comes to all the information we're getting about this very divisive topic. Now, geopolitically, the United States is even pushing pressure on countries that, of course, are supporting Venezuela, like Cuba, and, of course, their long-term geopolitical foes, China, Russia, and of course Iran, which support the Maduro current regime of Venezuela. The bigger, larger PR stunt that just occurred during this ongoing Cold War proxy, specifically larger economic conflict, was of course the planned return of what the United States and other governments are calling the new president of Venezuela's return to his home country, which John Bolton and other world leaders warned the current regime of Venezuela that this supposed new recognized president better return safely to the United States, since this is a top U.S. security priority. Now, of course, the current Venezuelan government actually said that he would be arrested because he left the country illegally, supposedly to deliver aid from the Colombian side, which they said was an illegal entrance and that he would face legal repercussions from. We saw a very heavy military and security presence at the Venezuelan airport, as of course with the enthusiastic support of U.S. Representative Marco Rubio. Juan Guaido, of course, boarded a commercial plane, even gave a speech on that plane, and landed safely in Venezuela, to of course also a planned protest, landing safely in Vargas, and then getting on another plane, according to some of the sources, to of course Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. And despite the threats of him being arrested for what the current Venezuelan government was calling a border violation and a violation of an order that they gave Guaido to specifically stay in the country, everything unfolded without any incident. And of course, what you're seeing here is a bigger cat and mouse game unfolding through, of course, public relations, PR, media, and its manipulation, because the United States and other governments threatened a, quote, swift response if anything would have happened to him. And essentially what was happening here is Guaido was pretty much bait on a fishing rod by the US government, trying to, of course, find a pretext for more US involvement, which very interestingly the Venezuelan government didn't bite on, even though there are record and sources showing how they are a very repressive government and how there are political prisoners within their country for opposing the current leadership. Now, according to some sources, this new selected president by the United States, Guaido, does not really have the persuasion and support of the people that many outsiders, of course, claim that he does. And of course, this is according to some sources that I was not able to independently verify. But when we look at this new kind of selected, supposed interim president of Venezuela that's being recognized by all these foreign countries, he definitely fits into the box of what is ultimately perfect for a bigger U.S. geopolitical policy, especially in Latin America. He fits into all the boxes perfectly, even publicly saying that he would nominate his own Citgo group. Citgo is, of course, the petroleum, gas, and oil company out of Venezuela. This, of course, would make the United States very happy with corporatized energy dependence, a bigger buildup and liberation of natural resources that they would be very happy about, while at the same time hitting back against their geopolitical foe, China, which, by the way, invested in Venezuela to the tune of $20 billion, which, of course, was agreed upon to be paid back in Venezuelan oil. And as we know, China is very energy dependent on other countries, and a revolution would of course put that into a big question mark that they would not be happy about, and most likely lead to a default on their larger investment, as well as other investments made by Russian companies to the tune of $2.3 billion that were also invested into that country. And this of course would be a major win for the United States. Also, very interestingly, this new interim recognized president also announced that the first thing he would do as president of Venezuela is, of course, take on loans by the IMF. And of course, if you read the book Economic Hitman, you know for a fact even what WikiLeaks proved not so long ago, and that is the fact that the US military ultimately, as well as other US power interest and money interest, have weaponized the IMF and World Bank, major global financial institutions that many people say have been used unfairly against, of course, developing countries for the benefit of course, the larger regional power, which predominantly is the United States. And honestly, if you look at Juan Guaido, this new recognized interim president, the dude seriously looks like a cookie cutter regime change establishment Barack Obama copy, not only with of course the same mannerisms and expressions, but also coming from a US learning institution with of course many ties to the CIA itself. Now of course this is circumstantial evidence which has not been backed by any solid evidence. But if we look at the overall trend of US-Latin American relations and the long history of regime change and conflict in that country, if we look at everything that has happened before, it is most likely the case here, even though again it is only very circumstantial evidence. Now I think it's also important to ask, how did Juan Guaido actually get some recognition? And it's very important to note here that Juan Guaido started to get some support and recognition after he was detained and arrested by, of course, the current regime, which brought him popularity and notoriety. Now, a lot of this happened when, of course, the Congress, the National Assembly of Venezuela, started opposing the president of Venezuela, Maduro, and not acting on his behalf, not passing any new laws, not passing any new legislation, which the president of Venezuela, Maduro, responded by, of course, stripping the parliament of any legitimate power, of course throwing off the checks and balances, and pretty much is the equivalent of, say for an example, if Donald Trump would get rid of the Senate and Congress here in the United States. Very interestingly enough, not many left-leaning people bring up these very important facts, but because of these major power moves made by Maduro and these PR mistakes, he brought upon major opposition to him inside of that country, which of course the United States is trying to seize upon these major kind of larger PR losses by Maduro, and tried a stunt of their own with, of course, trying to ship in humanitarian aid with a new self-declared interim president who would, quote, deliver it. Now, the very interesting part and very ironic part is this humanitarian aid delivery was pretty much engineered by Elliott Abrams, who was assigned by Donald Trump to deal with Venezuela, the same Elliott Abrams who used the use of humanitarian aid to arm the Contras in Nicaragua in 1986, which led to, of course, a very violent and bloody situation in that country, allegedly sending in $27 million of, quote, non-military aid for rebels who were secretly working for the United States, at the same time also getting military aid with that humanitarian aid to create a violent revolution in that country. A bloody conflict that has created that country to be an utter mess, and guess what? Is helping foster the larger migration crisis that, of course, we're seeing on the Tijuanan border. And of course, that didn't work. Maduro blocked the aid from coming in. And according to some media reports and also members of the US government, Maduro lit the aid on fire, preventing sick and hungry people from getting very important aid into that country. Now, regardless if that is true or not true, it is important to note here that the opposition side to Maduro, who was trying to deliver this aid, was also masked up, was violent, also had Molotov cocktails, have been documented throwing them wildly very close to the aid trucks, which some people speculate lit them on fire, which of course is a greater possibility in the grand scheme of things for a bigger kind of PR loss, because people online again are not stupid and we're finding out the truth by looking at the facts of this case. And that's why Venezuela has also received and accepted aid from Russia and other countries, but it has denied this specific aid, as they say it is contaminated with, of course, weapons for a greater revolution and more bloody conflict in that country. Whether that is true or not true, it is also important not to undermine the fact that Maduro and his regime don't also have the best record, as a human rights group is saying that over 25 people have been killed during the violent conflicts by the Venezuelan military and of course the colectivo gangs that operate with impunity and attack members of the opposition. Colectivos that of course are supportive of Maduro and are given special privileges and support by the socialist government there. China has also been helping the Venezuelan government repress people with online activity, censoring parts of the internet to help, of course, deal with this larger PR issue of people finding out of exactly what's happening here. And it's really PR and information that is integral here, and how it is portrayed, how it is shared, how people will understand and see this conflict that will ultimately determine it. And that's why there also has been a lot of attacks on, of course, independent media that, of course, are showing you both sides of this larger issue that, of course, is not just one-sided here. There's no way you can morally stand for the US side or the Venezuelan side, because both are flawed and both need to be called out on their flawed behaviors. PR, it is a disaster for both countries. Who will win, what will be done, will of course be determined by you and this larger PR game. And let's be honest here, the major support for Maduro comes mainly because of the US opposition and its history of violence and bloodshed all throughout Latin America for, of course, humanitarian purposes. A history that, of course, the Venezuelan military knows about, and this is why they are loyal to Maduro. And in my opinion, the United States and their aggressive actions and their aggressive overreach are only making Maduro more popular, and I could say that just from even my own reporting on the ground from Venezuela with, of course, that sentiment. This is also why the world is increasingly becoming wary of the US and their supposed humanitarian interventions, even according to a new Pew study that talked about global threat. And sadly, it does need to be called out that the United States ultimately is isolating itself from, of course, the world with more of these aggressive actions, and also just the bare bone fact that because of US sanctions, aid, food, and medicine is not being allowed into that country, creating more of an economic disaster, which of course, not rationally, people are suffering from. And sadly, the one common factor throughout all the sides here and all the bigger power plays here is, of course, that the people of Venezuela will continue to suffer, regardless if it's the IMF and large gas and oil companies that take over, or if it's Maduro and its horrible failed government policies with him with Salt Babe literally eating empanadas during the national... Oh, God, this is such a complicated situation. These are just the facts, okay? These are all the facts. Let me know where you stand, of course, in the comment section below. I am always interested to see if you are just as frustrated with all these developments, or if you actually have a specific side that you are backing here and why. Love to hear that. Would love to know if you are backing a specific side here, and if so, why. Because, hey, the best way to learn is by, of course, talking to as many people as possible, which we're going to do here in this comment section. If you found this video helpful and informative, please share it with your friends and family members, because definitely the YouTube algorithm and the bigger US war machine that is interconnected with, of course, these technocrats don't like these messages. They don't like this kind of new information that, of course, you won't get on the mainstream media, which, of course, they're forcing down your throats, which, of course, is just filled, and everywhere you look on YouTube, this is what they recommend. Not, of course, independent media, but please share this content with your friends and family members. And once again, if it wasn't for your support, donations, buying t-shirts, we wouldn't be here. And that's why I end every single video by saying, love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on youtube.com/WeAreChange.